Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Real View podcast. Our special guest today is Melanie McLane. She is joining us to preview her session up and coming at the Ohio REALTORS Convention and Expo this September. We're so happy to have her on. She's going to share with us a little bit about her session, how she teaches, what we need to be prepared for, and why you should be sure to attend. But before we get started in that, I'll tell you a little bit more about Melanie. She is a real estate agent, broker, and appraiser educator. She has decades of experience in all facets of real estate education, from course development to presentation. She's a REBAC Hall of Fame trainer, the 2012 RSPS of the Year, and was recently named Pennsylvania's Realtor of the Year. In addition, Melanie is a certified appraiser, licensed associate broker, and certified USPAP instructor. She has owned and operated a brokerage, taught everything from pre-licensing to designation courses, and continues to practice as both an appraiser and associate broker. In addition to her own courses, Melanie is certified to present most of the National Association of Realtors, REBI, and REBAC courses, several of which she's authored, co-authored, or revised. She currently serves as a director for the National Association of Realtors. Melanie, welcome onto the show. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, Allison, I'm so happy to be here. Ohio is a great state. I went to college in Ohio, but your realtors are always awesome, whether it's virtual or in person.
I love that. And thank you for coming back. And yes, you are no stranger to our Ohio Realtor family. That's why I was doing your introduction. And I'm thinking, half the people listening to the show are already going to be familiar with you and the work that you do. Because it's a lot. And we always love the opportunity to have you in and connect with you. So thanks and welcome onto the show.
Great. So
I read your bio, and I always like to ask the guests to tell me a little bit in their words of what they do, how they got started in real estate, what's led you to where you are today. Talk to us a little bit about you and let us get to know you a little bit.
Well, this is a great story. So I went to college and majored in English literature, actually at Kenyon College. And I came home from college and said to my mother, I want to teach and write. Now, my mother was the first woman broker in our county, the first one licensed. And she said, get your real estate license. But then I figured out I could teach and write real estate. I do love the business. I practice brokerage every day. My daughter-in-law is now in the business. She's the third generation. So that's how I got to be where I am today.
I love that. No, I know. And in your bio too, I know your mother, was a big part of you getting started in being involved in this industry. So I love that. Love it. Love a good family business. And that's amazing. So you're going to be here with us at our convention as a speaker. You're teaching risk management, what you say and do. Real estate licensees have duties and responsibilities to consumers as well as their customers and clients. These duties are based on federal, state, and local laws and regulations. Participants in this course will learn more about fiduciary duties, the most frequent claims against agents, misrepresentation and fraud, agency, fair housing, escrow, and risk reduction. And there's not a lot going on in any of those, is there?
So, when I started the course, the first set of research I did was, let's find out what people are getting in trouble for most often. So NAR had a list compiled from insurance companies who write errors and omissions insurance for realtors, the top 10 claims they defend realtors for. Okay. Number one is fraud. Now, fraud is so encompassing. It can be financial fraud. It can be disclosure fraud. It can be all kinds of fraud. But basically, if you know right from wrong, you should get a red flag. Breach of duty. So we have duties under license law. We have duties under the Code of Ethics if we're realtors. And whatever we have agreed to do with our client, that's a duty. It's not something we can say, well, I don't really feel like doing that. breach of contract. We have contracts with our clients where we say we're going to do certain things and they expect us to do that. Now, by the way, in your standard listing agreement, the seller is also agreeing to do things. They're agreeing to let you do your job. They're agreeing to make their home available for showing and things like that. Then you have negligence, and negligence is a word I see a lot in license law. I travel all over the country, and I like to say I'm living the dream. I stay in hotels. I don't go to bars. I sit up in hotel rooms and read license law. So I'm living the dream. And some people are like, that is a nightmare to me, but I enjoy it. But negligence you see in every license law I've looked at. Now, negligence is a really wide spectrum. You left the back door unlocked. That is negligent. You didn't advise a consumer of what they had to do to get out of a contract and they lost a huge deposit. That is also negligence. Believe it or not, bodily and property damage. Now, knock on wood, I've had no bodily injury at a property, but things do get damaged. Sometimes you have a situation where a buyer or an agent wants to look at something and it comes apart in their hands. Misrepresentation regarding condition. So in this class, I talk about staying in your lane. Now, we as realtors have love-hate relationships with home inspectors. And I will be the first to admit, I have a love-hate relationship. They're not all as qualified as we would like them to be. However, they are a huge area of risk reduction for us. So we don't want to talk and act as if we are a home inspector. We want to shift that risk by saying to our client, you can get an inspection done. Consumer Protection Act is another thing. And this is federal down to state level. So every time you give a seller a lead paint disclosure, that's consumer protection. Every time you give a client, a buyer, or a seller an agency disclosure, that's consumer protection. And failing to do it is a big deal. Earnest money and escrow money. And this is not real complicated because it's never been your money. And it should go into that escrow account and it should stay there. But nonetheless, you have that going on. And if I can just detour for a minute, a lot of states don't even require brokers to have escrow accounts anymore. Florida is one such state. In my state of Pennsylvania, we are required to have an escrow account, which I believe is true for Ohio. But what is happening is we're having people say, oh, the title company is going to hold the escrow deposit. All right, if you're a realtor and that escrow deposit is going to be held by a third party, not the listing company or the selling company, then I want to know what are their rules. Because here's a true story. I heard of a title company in Pennsylvania holding a deposit. The buyer contacted the title company, knew them well, and said, hey, I've changed my mind. Give me back my deposit. Mm-hmm. And without anything signed, no release, nothing, gave it back. Did not even tell the listing and selling agents. So that's a concern. Who's got that money and what are the rules for dispersal of that money if we have a problem? Misrepresentation regarding flooding and leaks. And so the FEMA maps get redrawn all the time, particularly after we have one of those disasters where what you hear is it's never flooded here before. And so they are going to redraw the maps. One tip that I include in this class for agents is please make sure you are checking with the municipality to see if they have updated their maps and are you looking at the most current version of that map? Because I see floodplain maps that were drawn 20 years ago. They're still out there. They may have been updated. And finally, misrepresentation concerning the value of the property. One of my most favorites because I'm an appraiser. So I have to tell you that it has always been scary as all get out to me that the day we give someone a real estate license, we say you can go price a property. Now, if they're in a good brokerage, they have a manager, a mentor, they're on a team, they have a broker, and someone shows them how to do a market analysis. But if they're not in that situation, they could come up with anything. Now, here's the sad thing. Whether you're too high on your price or too low on your price, you're going to harm the consumer. If you're too high, you've set the seller's expectations. I can get this. They might dig their heels in and say, I'm not going to take less because my realtor told me it's worth this much money. There's a thing we get in appraising we call market aging. And that's when a property has been on the market longer than is normal in the market we're in. And it causes everybody, every agent and every buyer out there, I guarantee you, says the same thing. What's wrong with that house? Because they're thinking, but something must be wrong with it, when in fact it could just be price. Now, clearly, if you underprice a listing, it will sell quickly, but then someone might go ahead and get a hold of the seller and say, why'd you sell your house so cheap? Because it was worth more. So these are some of the things we will be talking about. And there's so many things happening today in our industry that are risky areas. We've got, obviously, since the NAR DOJ settlement, we have a different world we're operating in. Really important for us to make the appropriate disclosures to our clients, to stress that commissions are negotiable, to negotiate a commission, to make it very clear to the client who you're representing, who you're not. And one of the other things that I talk about in all my classes is situations where we have a client and a customer. So we're representing our client, but we're not representing the customer. So here's an example. Many times a good agent, there's a for sale by owner in the market area. Your buyer wants to see that. You reach out to the seller and you say, hey, I have a buyer that would like to look at your property. And then you go on, hopefully you're doing this right, give them an agency disclosure. And then in my state, we have a great form for it that basically says, hey, I'm not representing you. You're not my client. I have this client. And all you're agreeing to is if my client buys it, there's a fee involved to my company. Well, that's great at the beginning. But then what happens in real life is you get an offer, you take it to that seller, and the seller says, well, what do you think of this offer? And the correct response is, I can't give you any advice about this because I don't represent you. And people don't always understand that thing of what it means to not be represented. I answered an email today from someone I sold a house to. She and her fiance bought a house. She has a house a couple hours away. And she emailed me and said, I was thinking of selling it on my own. What do you think? Well, I gave her a lot of information. Among other things, I said, logistically, you're 2 hours away. So that's going to be a problem. But it's a really complicated business to sell a house. And no one would be representing you, but real estate agents would probably bring you buyers and they are representing the buyer. So you need to understand how that's affecting you. So that's kind of a real quick version.
I love that. No, it's a great comprehensive overview and so much there to get into. And I think it's a 3-hour class.
It's a 3-hour class. This is a live class, I believe, with you. It's not virtual.
I think so. Yes.
And then I'm doing a virtual one no, I think this one is virtual. If it's in September, it's virtual.
Okay.
That's what my one sheet said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is with real estate, Allison, every day brings a new wrinkle. And I always say realtors don't need to watch HGTV, which drives us crazy anyway. We just need to go to work. And so just when you think you've seen everything, then something else happens. People don't understand, consumers don't understand. So much of our work happens after the contract is signed. That's when there's going to be a home inspection issue. That's when there's going to be an appraisal issue. And we get all the way to the final walkthrough and the seller left some stuff for you just in case you needed that paint. And, it's this much dried up paint in a hideous color in the bottom of the can. And there's like 10 of those. And you're like, we don't want these.
Get them out.
So, get them out. So it's a constant thing of doing that. And the other thing that I like to stress for the framework is you really have to know everything you can possibly know about your listing. Time and time again, I hear about agents, and it depends on where you are. In my MLS, we are required to upload a copy of the deed. Many MLSs pull that deed. For the heaven's sake, read it. Is there an easement in the deed? Is there a right of first refusal in the deed? What else is going on in that deed? Is there a life estate? And if there's a life estate, okay, who has that and are they still living? Because that's going to be a wrinkle. So it's a lot that people want to do. The other thing I like to talk about in this class is reminding agents of what authority we actually have. We have authority that's given to us by our clients. We cannot exceed that authority. And in every state, I hear the same phrase, lawful instructions. We have to follow lawful instructions. So if I list your house and you say, hey, I don't want showings on Sunday, that's family day, that's a lawful instruction. If you say to me, by the way, don't show my house to any people in that particular protected class over there because I don't like those people, oh my gosh, I can't follow that. That is not a lawful instruction. And you hear things in the industry like, and I still hear this way too often, an agent saying, well, I'm not going to present that offer because I know my seller wouldn't take it. That's not the authority you have.
Yep.
Not to mention that I have had countless sellers over many years take a price they told me they would never take. Now, fraud and misrepresentation. So when you think of the two of these, think about how fraud is deliberate and you should know better. So it's a really big deal. Misrepresentation can actually be innocent. So I sometimes tell this story when I teach this class because it happened to me. The very first house I bought was in an estate. And when I was there with the executor, I said, where's the property line? And he said, I'm not really sure. This was my sister's house. I don't know. I said, okay. So I moved in and the next door neighbor came over and said, oh, the line is right here. Now it was like 1 foot off a patio. And I thought, man, that's really close. But I thought, I don't want to fight with anybody. You've been living here a long time, you know. Well, I didn't have the house long. I got engaged and was getting married. So we bought another house and I sold this. About 3 months after I sold it, I got a phone call. Melanie, where you told us the line was wrong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to realtor jail. They said, we have another 10 feet. They had it surveyed because they were going to put a fence in. And so the next door neighbor just thought, you know what? She doesn't know any better. And it was an irregularly shaped lot. It was a triangular piece of land. So I'm just going to tell her the line is here and everything will be fine for me. So again, you know, rather than any real estate agent standing there saying the line is the trees or the hedge or the sidewalk or whatever thing you think is the line, bear in mind that is not always the line and it should be surveyed. So that's another thing. We have also a lot of situations where we want to make sure, how do I put this, that we give our buyers resources, but we don't violate the law. One of the things that comes up is sexual offenders. Now, every place I know, there is a public website that you can check and see who lives in a neighborhood who's on that list. We have a practice of always telling people to investigate that on their own because of Megan's Law. But I'm going to move from things that are not confidential that you should know about. So in the past few years, as you know, Airbnbs, short-term rentals have become quite the rage all over the country. And I love them. When I go on vacation, we usually stay in them. However, what people don't understand is that is all subject to a local ordinance. So Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, everyone's heard of Gettysburg because of the American Civil War. About 2 years ago, the Borough Council of Gettysburg changed their zoning. And they very much narrowed where you could have a short-term rental to a very, like 2 blocks wide, maybe 4 blocks long, and that's it. Nowhere else in Gettysburg can you have a short-term rental. Well, the out-of-town people who owned property were really irate that no one told them. Well, guess what? Yeah, they were told, but it's not where they were looking because that kind of change in every municipality that I know of in the United States, you have to have a public notice that says, hey, we're thinking about changing this. This is the open comment period. Read the ordinance, and then we're going to have a meeting, and you can come to that meeting and voice your opinion. Now, that is in the legal notices in a local newspaper. However, we live in the age of the internet. So I guarantee you that your realtors in Ohio can find what I found in Pennsylvania, which is a site that has all the legal notices. And then you can drill down. You can drill down by county. You can drill down by the kind of notice you're looking for, like an ordinance change would be. Because I feel that's a responsibility I have as a listing agent and a buyer agent to know what is legal. So I'm going to say to my buyer client, that is legal today. You can do that. You can buy this and rent it out short term. But you need to understand the municipality has the right to change that ordinance. And you need to kind of be on top of that.
Yeah, it's on you to keep up with.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is all such important stuff. It's a great reminder of all the things we need to be staying on top of, especially like you said, things are changing so fast. We went through, big practice changes just a few years ago, and we're still seeing kind of how that's been adjusted since all that's happened. So taking a class like this is really going to give you a good pulse on where the industry is, what you need to be being sure that you're staying on top of, and how to make sure that these little things that you may think you're good at, it's just a good refresher. It's a good pulse check to be able to say, hey, am I staying on top of all this? Because this is what's going on. You're on top of it, Melanie. You're keeping us very, up to date on everything that we need to, that you're seeing on your end as you're working with individuals. So it's a really great class and so important because, like you said, there is so much out there that we can find ourselves into trouble with, and we want to make sure to avoid that if we can at all.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't want any realtors to get sued, but we live in a very litigious society.
Yes.
And one of the things realtors need to understand is attorneys will always take a shotgun approach.
Yeah.
Oh, you bought a house and there's a problem. Listing agent, buyer agent, home inspector, appraiser, anyone we can think of will bring in. And I've had attorneys tell me, look, the goal is to settle out of court. The goal is to get enough money from each one of these people to make it go away.
Yep.
And I know of instances where attorneys have said to brokers, you're right, but it's going to cost you more money to prove you're right than it is to just simply write them a check and make them go away.
Yep. Isn't that crazy that this is the world we're in now? And it is. And unfortunately, our industry has had the spotlight on us right now. And while, yes, the NER case is settled and, that's been dealt with, that it doesn't mean we're out of the woods. It doesn't mean that other attorneys are going to, take advantage of this or see opportunity in this. So we want to make sure we have our bases covered, that we are, being as compliant and as safe as possible. And you're going to tell us how to do all of that. And I can't wait. It's going to be a really great course. What would you tell attendees who are coming to your session? What do you want them to know about? Is there any prep work that they should do beforehand? And they should come into your class kind of with a mindset or anything that we need?
I think they should have a mindset of, do I know everything I should know? Have I stayed up to date? So things that change, forms change. You have standard forms in Ohio. I have them in Pennsylvania. People need to be up to date on changes. Since the settlement, oh my gosh, I have seen so much antitrust violations, especially in social media. And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? We had a lawsuit over this. and actually here in Pennsylvania, we had a mandatory 2 hours of fair housing to renew our licenses, which happened in May. Well, we do 14 hours in Pennsylvania. So most of us write courses that are 3.5 hours long so that they are evenly divisible into 14. I put an hour and a half of antitrust in because people are violating antitrust all the time. It's a really scary thing. That's a federal crime. If you get the feds coming down on you, it's very hefty fines. And you just don't want to do it. But that's the tip of the iceberg with social media. You have a lot of stupid things in social media. Everything from people sharing what they shouldn't share, people going very deeply into touchy subjects like politics and religion. I mean, it's just like, think before you post before you do that. And at the end of the course, I talk about having a trail. Now, we used to say paper trail, and many people are paperless today, which is fine. But here's what I like to say at the end. Whether you're doing this electronically or on paper or whatever, you need to have a file, because in most states, the statutory period for the real estate commission to come back and say, hey, we've had a complaint about Smith to Jones and we want to talk to you about it. Allison, honest to gosh, I look at people and I say, what did you have for lunch last Thursday? And they all go like this. And I'm like, if you can't remember what you had for lunch last Thursday, are you going to remember all the ins and outs of a transaction that happened 2 years ago?
Yep.
Your file, whether it's electronic or paper or both, tells your story. The other thing is with text messaging, we've had email for a long time, but people are getting instructions by text message. So what's an instruction? I say to you, hey, Allison, the buyer came back with this, and you text me back, that's fine, I'll take it. That's an instruction. And so I need proof at some point, perhaps, that I did that because you told me to do that. Okay. And again, people are like, oh, I'm not going to worry about that. You have to worry about it. And as a broker, here's another layer of concern I have, because I am a broker. What if the agent who handled that transaction is no longer with your company? Worse yet, what if they've passed away? Mm-hmm. Now you've got this really thin file. It doesn't have all the documentation in it required by law. And how are you going to prove to your real estate commission, yes, we actually did dot our I's and cross our T's?
That's a problem.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you gotta record keep, gotta have that paper trail, the e-paper trail, whatever you want to call it. So important that you're having that and keeping reference, that if any of these instances that you're able to go back and you have solid proof and documentation of all that. So important. Melanie, we can't wait to see you in September, and we're so excited.
I can't wait to see you. I will be coming in remotely, of course, because it is virtual. And actually, I will be in Montana that morning, but I'll be fine. I'm headed to Idaho for Montana.
Yeah, you'll be with us virtually. It's going to be a great course. So much to be excited about, so much to look forward to if you're a realtor thinking about it. I mean, you need this course. You need to be able to stay on top of everything that's going on. Melanie's got the latest stats and what she's seeing on her end. She's on top of it too. She's going to share all of that with us to make sure that our realtors are staying in compliance, staying out of trouble, and avoiding any risks that are out there. And we're looking forward to it, Melanie. So I want to thank you again for coming on, for giving us a little preview. This is exciting, and we can't wait to see you online in September.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
And to all of our listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back with you next week. We'll talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.